Hey Harvest Kids, it's Mr. Carlos and Eddie. Hey boys and girls! Well, here we are with this week's Bible story. Today's story is called Character Counts, and it's from the book of Acts, chapter 16, verses 1 through 5, and from the book of Philippians, chapter 2, verses 19 through 22, and the whole letter that Paul wrote to Timothy, the first letter that he wrote to Timothy. So, let's go ahead and get started. What do you say, Eddie?
That sounds great, Mr. Carlos. Let's do it.
All right, well, here we go. So, Eddie, today we're going to do it the same way that we've done it in the past, to where you will play the part of Paul, and then I will narrate the story.
That sounds great.
Okay, well, with that, let's get in. Let's get to the story. So, before Paul's imprisonment in Rome, he took time to visit a few of the cities where he had first preached the gospel. During one of his stops, some Christians in Lystra introduced him to a young Christian man named Timothy. Timothy loved the Lord. His mother had taught him from the Bible since he was a child. Paul was so impressed that he invited Timothy to travel with him. Timothy agreed, and as they worked together, the two men became very close friends. Paul taught Timothy how to take care for God's people, or how to care for God's people. And Timothy helped Paul with the work of the ministry. Paul came to love Timothy so much he called him his son.
Wow, Mr. Carlos. That's a lot of love for Paul to call Timothy his son.
Yeah, that's a lot of love, Eddie. You're absolutely right. That's a special relationship that Paul and Timothy had. After Timothy's time of training was over, Paul sent him on his own visits to the churches Paul started, where Timothy would help train the leaders and care for the people. One church Timothy visited was the church in Philippi. Paul wrote ahead to them in his letter saying,
I hope God allows me to send Timothy to you soon. That way, I can be cheered up by the good news he sends me about you. I have no one else like him. He really cares about what is best for you. Other people care more about themselves than they do about Jesus. But Timothy has worked with me like a son with a father and has proven to be someone who wants to serve the Lord.
Very nice, Eddie.
Thank you, Mr. Carlos.
Even after Timothy left, Paul continued teaching and encouraging Timothy by letter. He gave Timothy special instructions to help him recognize what to look for in a man who is called to be a pastor.
Those who want to become a leader of God's people, Paul wrote, must be able to teach and have a heart and life that honors God. It is important to God that pastors lead their people by their example, not just their words. That is very important, isn't it, Mr. Carlos?
Yes, Timothy, it is very important. Paul gave Timothy a list of character qualities Timothy could use to decide if men were ready to be pastors. Paul said a pastor should have only one wife. He should be a man who knows self-control. He should be a careful thinker whom people respect. He should enjoy opening his home to people. He should be gentle, not someone who likes to argue. He should not be a violent person or a lover of money. Paul also wrote that a pastor must lead his own family well, because if someone does not know how to take care of his own family,
how will he take care for God's church?
That's right, and that's actually from the book of 1 Timothy chapter 3, verses 4 through 5. Paul gave Timothy a similar list for deacons and their wives. Paul knew how important it was for leaders to have godly character. That way, people would not be led into sin by leaders they trusted. Now, did you know that the way we live as Christians affects what others think about Jesus? That's why it's so important for pastors to live lives that honor God. Pastors lead by example. If the pastors of a church are sinning and don't repent, they can lead people who follow them into sin. Unbelievers who are watching might think the gospel isn't true. But when pastors are changed by Jesus and live in a way that honors Him, the whole church learns how to trust and obey God. Others who are looking on see that Christians are different, and soon they want to know Jesus too. So boys and girls, that's it for today's story. And don't ever forget that you are loved.